welcome to Bijou Banter, produced by the Bijou Film Board, a student-run organization at the University of Iowa, dedicated to the exhibition of provocative and engaging cinema. Since 2013, Bijou has assisted with the programming and operation of Film Scene, a nonprofit cinema in downtown Iowa City. It's Friday, October 23rd, 2015, and in this week's show, we'll be talking with director Terry Gilliam, whose book, Gilliam-esque, a pre-posthumous me memoir, just came to bookstores this week. Welcome to Bijou Banter, Mr. Gilliam.
Hello. I see I have nothing written here for me to say any more than what I just said. Hi.
Welcome to the show. Before we begin, I should also introduce my co-hosts, fellow Bijou members and film studies students in the Department of Cinematic Arts at the University of Iowa. We have Catherine Steinbach. Welcome, Catherine.
Glad to be here.
And Chongmin Yu. Welcome, Chongmin.
Hi, everyone.
And I'm Leah Vonderheide. Terry Gilliam is a director, screenwriter, animator, actor, and original member of Monty Python. Born in Minnesota and raised on Mad Magazine, Mr. Gilliam first connected with fellow Python cast member John Cleese while working for the satire magazine Help in New York in the early 60s. When Mr. Gilliam landed in London in 1967, both his connection to Cleese and his experience of appropriating visual imagery from various sources to create his unique photo stories for Help served as the foundation for his role in Monty Python's Flying Circus. Mr. Gilliam's DIY animation sequences, a mixture of his own art and cutouts from antique photographs, were not only a graphic expression of the verbose wit that is the trademark of the Monty Python troupe, but also the unifying visual language of the stream of consciousness comedy show. After co-directing 1975's Monty Python and the Holy Grail with co-Python Terry Jones, Mr. Gilliam decided to go it alone with 1977's Jabberwocky, an adaptation of Lewis Carroll's nonsense poem from his 1871 novel Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There. Next came Mr. Gilliam's trilogy of imagination in the 1980s with Time Bandits, Brazil, and the Adventures of Baron Munchausen, followed by his trilogy of Americana in the 1990s with The Fisher King, 12 Monkeys, and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Finally, in the new millennium, Mr. Gilliam has brought us The Brothers Grimm and Tideland, both from 2005, The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus in 2009, and most recently, The Zero Theorem in 2013. Mr. Gilliam, collectively your work boasts big names, including Sean Connery, Shelley Duvall, Robert De Niro, Jeff Bridges, Robin Williams, Bruce Willis, Brad Pitt, Johnny Depp, Heath Ledger, Matt Damon, Monica Bellucci, Christoph Waltz, and even Tilda Swinton. And your films have frequently achieved cult classic status. They are viewed worldwide and at this point across several generations. Yet your source material might not be considered so immediately accessible. From Lewis Carroll's nonsense poem to Hunter S. Thompson's wave speech, from Victorian Christmas cards to Chris Marker's La Jetée. I would argue that for millions of viewers, you have created a bridge from the avant-garde to popular culture and continue to introduce an experimental sensibility to the masses. Mr. Gilliam, is this a fair assessment of your approach? And do you consider yourself more of an artist, avant-garde or otherwise, or an entertainer, popular or otherwise?
What was that you were saying?
Avant-garde, popular entertainment, where do you find yourself?
I find myself sitting on a wobbly chair in somewhere in Iowa. That's where I find myself.
Welcome to Iowa City.
Thank you.
Do you find yourself to be someone who does gravitate towards what I'm calling avant-garde source material, or is that a conscious effort? Is that something that happens naturally for you?
No, I'm just incredibly selfish and do only things that interest me, and I don't actually think where I'm stealing my ideas from. They can be from commercial cinema, unknown cinema. I don't care as long as I can steal and get away with it and fool people into thinking I'm original.
So, can I ask you about 12 Monkeys? This will be my selfish question, given that La Jetée is a big favorite of mine, and I teach a lot of post-war French film. How did you come across that film? What made you decide to adapt it the way that you did? And
a producer named Chuck Roven sent me the script. The script was written by David and Jan Peoples, who had to fight for their credit of a film not based on La Jetée, but inspired by La Jetée. They had been asked to write a script, and they said, okay, we'll have a go at this, but it will be inspired by. we want to use it as a starting block, and then we'll go. And the script eventually, well, before we get to eventuality, the studio had paid a large sum of money for this. And they had obviously tried to get it made, and nobody knew what to do with it. And Chuck one day sent the script to me, and I read it and thought, I'd not read anything like this, anything as good and interesting and complex and difficult. So let's do it, is my attitude.
And how do you get this amazing range of actors to get involved in these projects? Do they come with the project when it arrives to you, or they hear Terry Gilliam and they answer the
and
call?
run away, yeah. They often do that. In this instance, the studio wanted to make it. They wanted to get their money back, basically. And various people came forward, and I was saying no to most of them because they just didn't interest me. And finally, Bruce Willis's name came up, and I had met him when we were making, what was it making? The film with Jeff Bridges and Robin Williams. What was that called?
Fisher King.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The Fisher King. I was just trying to get some, involvement from everybody here. There's a lot of people sitting in this room being very, very quiet, and I fear they're being respectful, which is a terrifying thought. Anyway, I had met Bruce during the shooting of Fisher King, and liked him surprisingly. Mainly because there was a scene in one of the Die Hards, I guess it was the first one, where after running through the building and then everything being shot up, and he had his feet impregnated with lots of broken glass, and he's hiding in the bathroom, picking the feet up, and on the phone to his wife, and weeping. And I thought that was an incredible scene in the middle of that action macho movie. And Bruce said that was his idea. And I thought, ooh, there's more to you than just being Mr. Macho. And so I was quite intrigued by him. And then we met in New York, and I said, okay, great, but I don't want Bruce Willis superstar in this movie. I want Bruce Willis actor. I want you to come naked with nothing. And that's how that started. And then Brad Pitt came to London to meet me, to try to convince me to hire him for the part that I just hired Bruce Willis to play.
Oh, okay.
And I said it was taken, and made this rather dangerous quantum leap. Brad, you can come and play the other part, which was a motor mouth character, which was something he had never done before. So that's how that came to be. And I must say something back to, did I choose to do an adaptation of La Jetée? I didn't see La Jetée until I had finished 12 Monkeys.
And that was conscious?
That was very conscious, because I don't know. I had a vague memory. I might have seen it, 30 years before, but I certainly had seen images from it, and that intrigued me. And I felt I don't want to be accused of stealing from that. So whether I stole or not, it was not consciously, because I hadn't seen it. We had, in fact, in Paris, just when 12 Monkeys opened, La Jetée was the short film at the premiere before it, and I thought, great. No, it's a great film. I mean, it's an extraordinary film. La Jetée, people, really should see it. A motion picture without motion, except for one moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lovely film, and as was 12 Monkeys.
Oh yeah, I certainly wanted to launch off from this kind of concept of the adaptation into the background that you have in illustration and animation. It would seem like translating words into images comes rather naturally to you, and might be first in your adaptation process with not just 12 Monkeys, but other of your projects. But so do you always start with your own illustrations of source material that you then translate again to film? Like, for instance, I was rewatching documentary Lost in La Mancha recently, and all of your illustrations and storyboards for Don Quixote are featured prominently. So I was just wondering if that's a normal process for you.
I mean, the first thing is to write the script. Sometimes I have images in my head, a lot of times not. It's just, let's develop character and action and scenes that hopefully work. And then I start storyboarding after that is finished. And as I'm doing it, I stop reading the script that we wrote and just start drawing a scene. And then when I finish drawing it, I sort of look back and realize I've gone very far afield from what we had written in the script. and then I start pulling the two things together. There's something that happens, I find, when I'm drawing. The images start coming out and they start telling their own story, and it guides me along. I've never worked out how this works, but it works, and I don't question things that work.
Well, is there a project that you've encountered where those kinds of images in your head just don't come easily, that you couldn't personally visualize?
Yes and no. I mean, I always, I dig around in photographs. I'll go anywhere visually, and I keep a drawer in my desk where all the ideas that never found a home, they live quietly, moldering. And when I get into these kinds of situations where whatever imagination I got left is no longer there, I start digging through it, and ideas come from images. I mean, sometimes with movies, I will decide on an image or a particular painter that is the inspiration. And things like when we did Tideland, it was Andrew Wyeth, and it was in particular, it was Christina's World, where I just saw it, was it yesterday or I think it was yesterday, at the Museum of Modern Art. I just passed it there. There it was, and it's this woman with arthritic hands in the grass, sort of crawling towards his house on the rise, and that was what I just felt was Tideland, and that's images in my head. Other times you start with a painter, say. Neo Rauch is an East German painter who was the beginning of Zero Theorem, and anybody who sees his painting and sees the film probably can't see the connection at all, but it does happen. You can see the connection along. We'll cut that cough out. Where's the cough button in this thing? This is obviously a student radio station. Only the other day I was on Sirius doing about 6 different interviews, and they pointed out the cough button for me.
I've never coughed, ever. Ever. It's supposed to be like a nervous tick that I've developed.
We'll fix it in post.
Yeah. But it was at probably the most important point of what I was saying. You better drink some water. This is terrible, because every time I get into that situation, you get a cough and it starts, you can't stop it, and you'll be in an interview gagging.
Trying to hold your breath.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's sort of, I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I don't have, there's no real structure. Things sort of flow back and forth. Sometimes the image will be better than what's on the page. I don't know. I'm very determined not to analyze how and what I do.
Yeah.
I just do it.
Well, and if you ever, it sounds like that when you ever are kind of looking for inspiration, you go into this cache of images that you already have to kind of delve into something familiar to you that is already inspirational for like a catalyst.
Well, that's correct. And then whatever I do it, and then allow film students and critics to then spend ages making sense of it and explaining it, which I actually enjoy when I go and start reading reviews or doing interviews like this. I actually discover what I've done often. I had no idea.
Well, one of my follow-up questions is, your films tend to deal with this tension between reality and fantasy, often veer into the pathology of delusion. Characters attempt to make their world more interesting through altering their reality somehow. So do you as a filmmaker relate to these characters and those attempts? Does filmmaking fulfill that same urge within you? Or does the kind of pragmatic process of making a film eventually take over? You can't quite be as escapist as you want to be ultimately.
No, I mean, I'm not actually interested in films or what they do. I like the idea of trying to get people, I just said a lie there. But it's the fact I'm trying to encourage people to think and construct their own world rather than the world that is imposed upon all of us 24 hours a day with 24-hour news. Ted Turner should be shot. There is not 24 hours worth of news in any one day. Simple fact. And so with whether it's news, the media, commercials, They are warping reality. And I'm trying to encourage people to start thinking and get back to reality. Fantasy is so much part of what pretends to be reality these days. Imagination is the only way to combat that. In films, what I'm doing is the fact that, yes, one's got an imagination, one wants to fly, one wants to escape, quote, the quotidian reality of our lives, the tedium and boredom, especially when you get to be close to 75 years old. The repetitive nature of life is so horrible. You'll do anything to dream your way out of it, but the reality is you can't, because the bus comes along and runs you over if you don't look both ways before you cross the street.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Can we talk about more your latest film, because I think it is sort of like an update of Brazil. So 30 years after Brazil, there's a definite change in the ways in which our human labor is exploited in various conditions. So in your latest film, The Zero Theorem, we have seen how humans are plugged into machines and how their brain power is extracted to the fullest extent. And again, that seems so confusing to outsiders, like a 3D Tetris. So do you think the advent of the digital exacerbates the exploitative situation? How is our techno-dystopia fundamentally different from the one 30 years ago?
Ah, yes. Yeah, exacerbating. It is, definitely. I mean, it's a two-edged sword. That's the problem. It does wonderful things. We've access to more information if we want it, but it also is very seductive and hypnotic, and suddenly you can find your day wasted on endless white rabbit trails through more and more stuff out there. And you can just wallow in gossip and bullshit most of the time. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody can say what they want without fear of anybody attacking them, other than on the web, which you don't really exist in. So you hide. I don't know. I haven't quite formulated any sort of answer to the condition we find ourselves in. But it certainly seems to be more bread and more circuses than any Roman ever imagined, while our corporate masters march on. And we're all very happy to have more and more techno toys, which do more and more thinking for us. They certainly take over our memory. We don't need memory anymore. My iPhone, knows more than I do. It's as simple as that. It thinks faster. And this is very worrying, because I don't know, people are atomized now. We don't really talk face to face, when you can have an avatar and be whatever you want on the web, date whoever you want on the web, in any form that you can imagine. I don't know where it's going. I think with something like Zero Theorem, I just sort of start the discussion. I just know that what's dangerous is to make films about things like this, because you become the things you make. And now I am Cohen. I live my life with my head stuck in my computer, not living what I should. I spend far too much of my day with that computer and communicating through that than I should, rather than hanging out in beer joints and having a good time and talking to people. It's very dangerous. I mean, the only kind of point I was making, in a sense, with the difference between Brazil and now. Well, now is Brazil, so I was there just 30 years early, and so now you have Homeland Security and the ever-growing bureaucracy that is, and then, but I think the difference I was trying to make in Zero Theorem was how it's basically corporate and not governmental. My concern, especially when the Trans-Pacific and Transatlantic trade agreements are up, and where our leaders, our representatives are not even allowed to read the thing. That's this is the trade thing, which is basically giving corporations a free run of the planet. Very nice. And so that, and if a country like the United States or a smaller country like Canada would say, but we've just passed these laws against, let's say, smoking for the whole nation, Philip Morris can sue. And it goes to a court that is not a national or an international court. It's a court of three corporate lawyers. And this is what's being dealt with at the moment, signed off on, while we're playing with our iPhones.
And do you feel like, given what sounds like a bleak description of the current state of things, is this like a world that you want to actively be a part of changing? Or do you just...
I've given up.
You've given up. There's a great line in your book where you said, I had decided I was better as a cartoonist than a bomb-throwing anti-war protester. And is that because you thought that you could affect change through cartoons, or because you had given up even then?
No, I was fearful of harming other people. I mean, I was that angry, and throwing up bombs. They're quite effective. I mean, we're dropping a few in Syria, and it's having a great effect, I think. It's solving the problem. Or I can just rely on a big cartoon foot coming down and stomping on other bits of my cartoon work and dealing with things that way. No, it's about how far you will go to change the world. And at the moment, I think I'm running out of steam, frankly, so it's your problem. I'll just throw the ball to you and you can get to work.
You think it's still changeable?
Everything is always changeable. It may just be that we all just march unrelentingly over the cliff and then the whole thing crashes, and that changes things.
So on a related note, do you think the digital revolution changed your filmmaking style? Because you seem so well versed in the history of art. You always refer to all these different painters, images. So when we have that transition from the analog to the digital, how do you see your, for example, archival images? How are you going to be inspired by, I don't know, this digital culture?
I mean, the difference is that now I don't need to take up so much space in my house with all the books that I like. I can just go on the web and steal from there. Is it really? I don't care. I really don't care between analog and digital. I was supposed to get all excited when people are now reverting to vinyl. Wow, because it's so warm and cuddly. This is bullshit. Come on. What vinyl is covered with scratches and ticks and pops because you can't keep your disc clean. Where digital, it's really nice and clean, and when it's silent, it really is. So you've got a bigger dynamic range when it comes to film. I shoot on film because it captures more information than digital does at the moment. But I want my films projected digitally because more people will see a clean version of my film than they would if I was projecting it on film. The only people who get to see the clean version are the people at the premiere. After that, scratches, pops, everything.
Well,
Next, please.
No, but I also have another.
Oh no, get back here. Fight for your questions.
yes.
I do have another question because you seem to be very conscious about which directors are going to influence your style, right? Because that's probably the reason why you didn't see La Jetée before you made 12 Monkeys. So do you have, some particular preferences? Like that's your vision, you want to make certain kind of film, or like you just want to get away from all these burdens of masters?
So no, I don't think any of that. Anything that I like or remember, is more to the point, is an influence. I don't actually go out thinking about style or any of that. That isn't the way it is. I haven't been trained as a filmmaker at USC Film School, where they learn to do Steven Spielberg style of filmmaking, and they're very good at it. And it's very specific, very clear. I don't know. I think there's two ways of making films. You can be like the guy in the National Where's the cough when I need it? Come on, cough for me. I expect you to cough.
It was my fault.
That's good. I feel better already. Somebody else to blame. But it's, you go to a big art gallery, and there's the people that sit there in front of the Rembrandt, and they paint, and they copy, and they learn. They learn a lot by doing that. That's one way of filmmaking. Those who go to film school and watch films, analyze, write papers on them, that's one way. mine has always been much more autodidactic. I can say that because it's a university radio station. I've always wanted to use that word on radio. So I don't think about it. I rely on memory, what I thought I saw, not what I actually saw, because time and time again I'll be setting up a shot, or somebody will say after the film's done, it's very much like that. And I go back and look at what was maybe vaguely my memory of a scene in another film, and my memory has very little to do with what was really there on film. And I find that's intriguing. I like that. I like working that way. And it frees me. I say there's one thing in the book, Gilliam-esque, which we're here talking about, and I'll say that several more times, Gilliam-esque, 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 a pre-posthumous memoir, or possibly my Grand Theft autobiography, or maybe just me. Anyway, we're here talking about Gilliam-esque again, and welcome back to the show. Gilliam-esque is available. Actually, I've just signed several copies for the bookshop here in Iowa City. Anyway, enough of this. Anyway, I can't even remember what I was going to say. But there's something in the book that I was going to reiterate, and I can't remember. You've read the book, haven't you? Know it? Word perfect yet? No?
You were talking about inspirations, painters, films.
See, I can't remember either.
I can't climb in there and figure out where you were going.
It's very much like the book Gilliam-esque. It wanders in all sorts of areas, back and forth, and it confuses everybody. So it requires actually buying several copies of the book so you can have your friends. So when they read Gilliam-esque, they will be able to sort out your problems. Gilliam-esque now available.
Okay, well, we should probably wrap up here.
What?
No? You want to keep talking?
Yeah, well, there's so much more in the book to talk about.
Do you want to tell us why you decided to write this book? I hear that it was supposed to be a coffee table book extraordinaire, which I would argue it's a beautiful book. I'll put it on my coffee table after you sign it.
We've actually put the coffee. We've already put the coffee cup stains on it, so that in case you spill or your cup rests on it, there are stains already there, so you don't have to take or feel responsible for messing up. Gilliam-esque, a great book available now. Sorry about that. No, what else do you want to talk about? Let's not talk about that shitty book. It's crap. I flushed that book. I didn't write it.
Oh my lord. That's an image. I'm picturing it animated, like in my head with cutouts.
Please don't.
Well, I don't know. Can we just talk about, do you think there's hope for American cinema?
I don't know. I'm actually working on a couple projects that probably, that we're revamping, that were written as film scripts for various studios who are now adapting for the longer form for TV, because it's the thing that's most exciting right now. Films have become so much processed. It's not that they're horrible, it's just that they're so utterly, completely repetitive. And the other problem is that because the studios are spending all their money on remaking more and more Marvel things, there's very little left for the rest. And so the business of cinema right now is you either make a film for less than $10 million or for more than $100 million. There's nothing in there, in that middle ground. And that's the kind of area that I tend to need to play in. So I think what's going on with Netflix, first they recorded deaf.
Do you need some water?
It's gonna be all right eventually. I hope so, because I'm fading away and I'm getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and I think I'm gone. Bye.
This is the most surreal radio
I know.
experience that anyone has ever had.
We're here to play with your minds. So you don't have to. You don't have to be students. I mean, I think it's quite wonderful. You've got to actually think about the kind of stuff I do and put it in words that provide interesting questions. And it's great, and I hope once you graduate, you won't have to do that anymore. Just go and enjoy and experience.
Just go to the movies.
Yeah, basically. No.
Only aggressive questions after watching films. That's
Yeah,
only,
no.
That's only what I want.
But you're
That's
absolutely
what I
right.
subsist
But you want to come out of the cinema and start arguing with whoever you went with.
Yeah.
That you've had a different experience, and they say it's about this. No, it's not. It's crap. No, it isn't. It's wonderful. You want that, and it doesn't happen enough these days. People go out and say, "Oh, man, it's okay. It's okay." I mean, that's like a death sentence for me for somebody to come out of my films and say, "Hey, what'd you think?" No, it's okay.
I'm pretty sure no one has ever walked out of one of your films and thought, that was okay.
Thank you. Thank
It's
you.
such a visceral experience. I mean, you have a full-bodied reaction to your films.
That's great. I mean, that's what I'm hoping to get out of people, and then maybe, and what's interesting I find also is like a good wine. It maybe take a year or two before it's really drinkable. Sometimes that happens for people. I love the fact that I remember I was doing an interview with some French journalist in Paris when Thailand came out, and he said he saw the film and just hated it, despised it. He just was so angry, but because he was a fan, he felt he had to do an interview with me. And before the interview, he watched it a second time, and he thought it was one of the most beautiful films he'd ever seen. Now that was the best thing I'd ever heard. Something to have such extreme changes, and that's what the films hopefully do occasionally. And whether they continue, who knows? But, whether I get a job, who knows?
Do they do the same for you? Do you often kind of vacillate between loving and hating your own films?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, especially when we're in the final stages and we're having screenings to, there's not much more we do. Yeah, one time I watched, I think it's the biggest piece of shit ever put on celluloid, and then the next I think, no, that's not so bad.
Obviously, I'm a genius. Yeah.
No, I don't go that extreme. I think, that's not so bad. It goes from there, from not so bad to utter shit.
But they're never just fine.
No, I keep wanting to wait and not watch them for several years, then come back and watch them. And sometimes I'm delighted. Other times, all I can see is all the things I got wrong. It's just the nature of it. But no, I would love to be able to watch one of my films having not been involved in the making of it. It's just a bystander watching it. No, that's the problem. It's maybe why you keep making films, because they're not satisfying ultimately. And I can't imagine what it's like to actually make a film that you can then smugly say, yeah, that's great, I did a great job, because where do you go after that?
Well, this has been a real pleasure, and we're so grateful that you came in and talked to us today. I should mention for listeners that as part of the University of Iowa Lecture Committee's fall semester series, Mr. Gilliam will be speaking in the main lounge of the Iowa Memorial Union at 7:30 this evening. Also, several of his films will be playing at Film Scene this weekend, including Time Bandits, which plays tomorrow, October 24th at 10 a.m. as part of the Picture Show, and 12 Monkeys, which also plays tomorrow, October 24th at 1 p.m., and Sunday, October 25th at 1 p.m. You can also pick up a copy of Gilliam-esque.
Gilliam-esque. Let's say that all together now.
Gilliam-esque at bookstores today. If you're interested in seeing film that challenges, inspires, educates, and entertains in downtown Iowa City, please check out any of Mr. Gilliam's films, but also Film Scene and Film Scene's website, icfilmscene.org, to learn more about the Bijou Film Board's unique and long-standing role in the exhibition of provocative and engaging cinema in Iowa City. Please check out bijou.uiowa.edu. You've been listening to Bijou Banter. Catherine, thank you always for being here for me.
It was quite a pleasure.
Chongmin, it's always a pleasure.
Likewise.
And Mr. Gilliam, this was an honor. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
I'm Leah, and I look forward to more banter next week.